Chapter 9 looks intimidating, but it's not. This is actually not that hard. I know that it looks like there's a lot of forms, but this is really straightforward. You've already learned most of these pieces. There's just a couple new little bits we got to fit in. So you already know the present middle participle, right? A participle is a verbal adjective, which means it's an adjective. That's what it is, derived from a verb, a verbal adjective. And you learned that to create the present middle participle, you take men, you have a thematic vowel, then you take men, and you add your 2-1-2 endings, your second declension masculine, your first declension feminine, your second declension neuter, os, a, on, right, across the nominative. So you add your 2-1-2 endings onto men, you attach that to a verbal stem, and you've created your present time, present tense, middle, so reflexive, or in deponent cases, or in situations where it's a deponent verb, functionally active, but middle in form, right? Middle voiced participles. Menos, something philomenos, something like that. So, here, we're going to keep the tense the same, still present tense, where it's still a participle, it's still a verbal adjective, but now we're interested in creating the active voice. This is just straightforwardly, subject is doing something to object, right? Active voice means the subject is the agent, and they are straightforwardly doing something to a direct object. Or just being, right? They're just doing something. To create this, you use, instead of men, which is the middle, is how you form the middle voice in the present tense, you use ont. And as someone has written into this PDF, quite helpfully, we get the word ontology from this piece. Ontology is the study of what exists, what kinds of things exist, what it means to exist. And the reason why ontology means that is the present active participle of the verb to be, the verb Amy, the verb to be, being, is just this participle ending all by itself. So you take off the verbal stem and just have the participle ending all by itself, and that is the present active participle of the verb to be. Presented here, let's ignore the nominative for a second, but presented here we have ontos, onti, onta, right? The genitive singular, dative singular, accusative singular. These are just the verb, this is the verb to be, and these are its present active participle forms. Note, these endings are all third declension endings. So if you have already learned your third declension ending, and you should have, you have no new forms. These are all you're learning is ont, add the third declension ending. And you're done. That's it. You take your verbal stem, and you slap ont into the middle, where men had gone before, and you put a third declension ending on it, and you've got a participle. So there's no new memorization here. That's almost true. We'll see the feminine is a little different. But you'll remember that third declension nominative singulars are always unpredictable, right? You just kind of have to learn them. That's the case here too. The nominative singular of a present active participle is just own, omega nu. So it looks like a genitive plural of a noun or an adjective. That's how you've seen this most of the time. So it looks like that's the genitive plural thing. But that's going to be genitive plural on a noun stem, right? This is going to be showing up slapped into a verb stem. Like right here, lu-own. Luo is a verbal stem, meaning to loosen or destroy. And we have lu-own. So you might be tempted, if you don't know your vocab, you might be tempted to think it's a genitive plural noun, but it's not. It's a verbal stem, not a noun stem, lu. And so this is going to be the present active participle of loosening, destroying. So somebody loosening something is doing something else, right? Because it's a nominative. So somebody loosening the boat is about to set sail, right? The man loosening the boat is the one who's about to set sail. That's the sort of sentence you might use this in. Good. So that hopefully is easy. The feminine here is a little bit different, but it's not hard. I mean, it's instead of ont, you've got oos. So I guess that's the other thing you have to learn is us, ant and us. And this is with first declension feminine endings, a, ace, a. So not that hard. This is your sort of standard set of first declension feminine endings, just attached to us. And that's it. That's the forms. You'll have to learn how to sort of use these. They're used in all the same ways you've already learned your middle participle, but more common because there's lots of active verbs, and they've sort of been using just sort of middles that are easy to understand because they're being used as opponents. So, pay attention to those, but those are forms you should be able to recognize and you should be able to produce. The only other thing, so they're giving you some more sort of forms of the third declension noun. Please read through these, but it's the same endings, just different interactions with stems. So stems that end in vowels, stems that end in liquids, stems that end in, I think rho might be one of them, or NT is one of them. So just look over those. It's the same endings, no new endings, nothing to explain, just new rules about how to sort of combine vowels with other things. What is perhaps new here is just they're giving you for the first time an overview of what the genitive does. And hopefully none of this is surprising except for maybe part D, which we'll talk about here, which is what I wanted to talk about. So for the most part, genitive, you'll remember I introduced the genitive to you as the case of characterization. It is the adjectival case. So it's a noun. We're doing this to nouns. You can also do this to adjectives, but functioning as adjectives. So noun in the genitive case is still a noun, but its function is to characterize another noun, usually. So a noun in the genitive case is functioning to characterize something else. The most common forms of these are possession. It is the dog of the boy. It's the boy's dog. That is what dog is your nominative singular of the boy, just tells you more information about that dog. It belongs to the boy. That's the most common. We talked about composition, the table of wood. They're also giving you now the partitive genitive. Many of those present. So many is your subject. There are many people, poloi, but you want to know something more about those many? Well, there are many of those present. So partitive genitive or genitive of the whole is another class of these. Very simple, can be translated with the word of, which is very easy. C is that there are prepositions that take the genitive. You've already encountered this. Those sometimes are predictable. You might expect ek out of to take the genitive, apo from to take the genitive. Maybe less obvious that meta, meaning with in terms of accompaniment, is going to take the genitive. I'm not sure. I would have predicted that, and yet here it is. So pay attention. Dia meaning through, ek meaning out of, apo meaning from, meta meaning with, and uper meaning on behalf of, for the sake of. Those all take a genitive case. And that genitive, why is that noun in a genitive after a preposition like that? Because of the preposition. There's no more explaining it than that. The prepositions are on some level just unpredictable, and they just take a case that they take. Now, the thing I wanted to talk about here was D, the genitive used with certain verbs. Now, we saw before there are certain verbs that take datives that we translate into English as if the dative was a direct object, as if the dative was an accusative, right? We've seen a couple things like this. Usually there's actually an explanation for it. Something like to obey someone, you do in the dative, but that's because obey is a middle tense, which of the verb to persuade, and you are persuading yourself for someone, right? So there is a logic to this most of the time. There is technically a logic to this use of the genitive as well, although sometimes it's very attenuated or very difficult to understand. And it has to do with the fact that the genitive has swallowed up another Proto-Indo-European case. It's swallowed up the ablative. This is not going to be terribly helpful for you learning this language for the first time. So for now, let's just do the easy version, which is there are a couple of verbs of desiring and verbs of grabbing, taking hold of, grasping, verbs of desire and grabbing that just take genitive nouns as their direct objects. These verbs are not going to, generally speaking, not going to have accusative direct objects. they're going to have genitive direct objects. That is, we'll translate them like direct objects. So verbs of desire and verbs of grabbing. Those are the two most important classes. There are a couple others, but that's basically, those two get you most of the way. So we'll just learn it as a rule that desire words and grabbing words, grasping, holding, all the words like that, can take genitive nouns instead of accusative nouns as the direct object. And that's it.